It started on a quiet Friday evening, the kind of night that felt safe, predictable, a calm before the kind of storm you never see coming. I remember walking up the stairs to our apartment, holding two takeout bags and humming to myself, thinking how good it would feel to finally unwind with Emily after a long, exhausting week. We'd been together for almost 2 years. She was my peace, my anchor, my everything, or at least that's what I believed. When I opened the door, the lights were dim and she was sitting on the couch, legs folded, staring blankly at the carpet. At first I thought she looked tired, maybe sick. But when she turned her face toward me, I froze. Her eyes were swollen, her cheeks streaked with tears, and she looked like someone who had just buried a secret too heavy to carry any longer. I dropped the food on the coffee table and knelt beside her, panic running through me. "Em, what happened? Are you okay?" I asked. And that's when she said it, quietly, trembling, like every word burned her throat. "I kissed my ex." The world around me slowed. My heart stuttered, my breath caught, and for a second I thought I misheard her. But she kept talking, fast, desperate, her voice cracking. "It just happened, I swear. It didn't mean anything. He came to the cafe today, we talked. It was stupid, I wasn't thinking." Every word felt like a blade twisting deeper. My body went numb, but my mind screamed. I wanted to yell, to throw something, to do anything, to stop the sound of her voice. Instead, I just stared at her, trying to recognize the woman I loved. But I couldn't. She kept crying, saying she regretted it, that it was just a moment of weakness. Weakness. That word replayed in my head like an echo of everything we'd built. Fragile. Collapsing. I remembered the promises we made, the plans for our future, the nights she'd tell me I was her forever. Now all I could see was that moment, her lips on someone else's. And it made me sick. Why? I finally managed to ask, my voice barely holding steady. She looked up, eyes red, whispering, "I don't know. It just happened. He said he missed me, and I didn't stop him in time." Didn't stop him in time. That sentence shattered whatever was left inside me. I stood up, stepping back like she was someone dangerous. The room felt smaller, the air heavier. I wanted to escape, but I also wanted to understand how someone who swore they loved you could betray you so easily. "Do you still love him?" I asked. She shook her head instantly. "No, I love you." But her voice trembled, uncertain, like she was trying to convince herself. The silence that followed was suffocating. I looked around at the framed pictures on the shelf, the little notes we left for each other, the stupid movie tickets we'd kept from our first date, all of it, suddenly meaningless. She reached for my hand, whispering, "Please, say something." But I couldn't, because the truth was, I didn't know what to say. My heart was breaking in real time, and there was no script for this kind of pain. I sat down on the couch, staring at the floor, trying to breathe through the chaos in my head. She kept apologizing, crying harder, swearing it would never happen again. I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to, but something inside me had snapped. I wasn't sure if I could ever look at her the same way again. Hours passed in silence, just the sound of her crying and my own heartbeat hammering against my ribs. When I finally spoke, my voice didn't sound like mine. "You made a choice, Emily, and choices have consequences." She looked terrified, nodding, whispering, "I'll do anything. Please don't leave me." But I didn't respond. I just stood up and walked into the bedroom, locking the door behind me. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the wall, realizing the cruelest part wasn't just the betrayal, it was knowing that I still loved her. That was the knife that twisted deeper. Love makes you blind, but betrayal makes you see too much. The next morning, sunlight poured through the blinds, but it felt cold, sterile, almost mocking. I sat at the edge of the bed staring at my phone screen for what felt like hours, scrolling through old photos of Emily and me, each picture stabbing like a reminder of what used to be pure. Her laugh, her eyes, the way she used to cling to my arm at every streetlight, all of it felt like scenes from someone else's life now. I heard the faint sound of dishes clinking from the kitchen. She was still here. I thought she might have left, but no, she was trying to act normal, like we could just erase what happened with breakfast and small talk. I stepped out, and she turned. her eyes swollen but hopeful. "Good morning," she whispered, voice fragile. I didn't respond. I poured myself some coffee, sat across from her, and let the silence choke us both. She tried speaking. I didn't sleep. I kept thinking how I could fix this, but I raised my hand to stop her. "Emily," I said calmly, "you can't fix something you broke deliberately." Her lips trembled, and for a second, I saw that guilt in her eyes, the kind that eats away at you when you realize you've destroyed something irreplaceable. She begged me to listen, to give her a chance, but I had already made up my mind. I wouldn't scream, I wouldn't beg, I wouldn't even leave right away. I'd let her live with what she did. That was my silent revenge. I went about my day as usual, but inside I was hollow, running on fumes of anger and disbelief. At work, my mind wandered. I kept replaying her confession like a scene stuck on repeat. My coworker Matt asked if everything was good with Emily. I just smiled and said, "Perfect." Because what else could I say? That the woman I trusted with my heart had traded it from nostalgia? That the love of my life folded under the weight of a familiar smile from her ex? No. I wanted the world to think everything was fine while she drowned in her own guilt. When I came home that evening, she had dinner ready, candles lit, like some cliché redemption scene. The table looked beautiful, but it felt like a crime scene to me. I sat down not out of hunger, but curiosity. She served me food with trembling hands and started crying again. "I don't deserve you," she said. For once she was right. I didn't say much, just nodded, and the silence had everything. After dinner she tried to hug me, but I stepped back. Her face broke again, tears streaking down as she whispered, "Please don't stop loving me." I looked at her and said quietly, "I can't control that, Emily. Love doesn't come with a switch." That night I went out for a drive. The city lights blurred through my windshield as my thoughts spiraled. I ended up parking near the cafe where she said it happened. I sat there for an hour staring at that door, imagining her inside, laughing, flirting, leaning in. My stomach churned. I could almost see it happen, the moment she crossed the line. It wasn't just the kiss that destroyed me, it was everything behind it. The decision to stay quiet, to hide it, to confess only because guilt became unbearable. I realized then that forgiveness wasn't what she wanted. She wanted release, and I wasn't going to give her that. Over the next few days, I became distant. Not angry, not loud, just silent, indifferent. That scared her more than shouting ever could. She tried to win me back with affection, random texts, small gifts, but I gave her nothing. I let her taste the emptiness she'd left inside me. She started breaking down more often, apologizing every chance she got, but the more she cried, the calmer I became. Inside I was changing, not out of hate, but out of clarity. I started going to the gym again, hanging out with friends I'd neglected, focusing on work. I was building myself back piece by piece, but she wasn't part of the picture anymore. The guilt was consuming her. She started avoiding her friends, skipping shifts, and the once bright Emily I knew began fading into someone I barely recognized. One evening I came home and found her sitting in the dark, clutching her phone. She looked up at me with hollow eyes and whispered, "I saw him today. He tried to talk to me again, but I told him never to come near me." I nodded, emotionless. She wanted validation, maybe some sign that I still cared, but I gave her none. "You handled it," I said simply, walking past her. That broke her more than any argument could have. That night she slept on the couch, sobbing quietly. And as cruel as it sounds, for the first time since her confession, I slept peacefully. Because I realized she'd given me something I never expected. Freedom. The kind that comes from finally seeing the truth. She had kissed her past, and in doing so, she had killed our future. Days turned into weeks, and our apartment turned into something colder than winter. Two souls living under the same roof, but galaxies apart. I woke up every morning before her, not because I wanted to, but because I couldn't bear to hear her whisper my name in her sleep anymore. Emily had changed. She moved slower, spoke softer, smiled less. The guilt was eating her alive, and for the first time, I didn't feel pity. I felt control. I wasn't cruel, not directly. I didn't yell or insult her. I didn't need to. My silence was sharper than any words could ever be. I focused on myself, joined a boxing class, reconnected with my old college friends, started running again. Every punch, every mile, every sweat-soaked night at the gym became therapy. And while I was rebuilding, she was falling apart. She stopped going out with her friends. I overheard her crying to her mom one night, saying, "He's here, but he's gone. I can feel it." She was right. I had gone, mentally
emotionally, spiritually. But I wanted her to feel that absence every single day. That was my quiet revenge. The kind that doesn't destroy instantly, but erodes slowly, painfully, like rust on something once beautiful. One evening, after a late gym session, I got home to find the apartment dimly lit with candles again, the same desperate attempt she'd tried before. She stood there, in a black dress, her eyes glistening. "I made dinner," she said softly, "and I wanted to talk." I almost laughed, but I nodded and sat down. She poured her heart out again about how much she regretted it, how she hated herself for it, how she wished she could take it back. Her voice cracked when she said, "I'll never forgive myself if you stop loving me." I took a sip of wine, looked her straight in the eye, and said calmly, "Then you'll never forgive yourself." That silence afterwards was brutal. Her face crumpled and she broke down sobbing uncontrollably. But I didn't move. I didn't comfort her. Because that's what she wanted. My forgiveness, my touch, my softness. But those were luxuries she had burned when she chose someone else. That night, I didn't sleep beside her. I stayed in the living room, scrolling through job offers in another city, looking for a clean start. I knew I wouldn't leave immediately. No, I wanted her to live every moment knowing I could leave, that her security had become a privilege she no longer owned. The next week, I noticed she started doing small things to please me again. Packing my lunch, cleaning the apartment, leaving handwritten notes with "I miss you" or "I'll wait forever." Each note went straight into the trash. It wasn't about cruelty. It was about boundaries, ones she shattered the moment she kissed her past. One day, while at work, I got a message from a mutual friend, Sarah. "Hey, saw Emily crying outside the cafe again. You okay, man?" I replied, "Yeah, I'm good." And for the first time in months, I actually meant it. That weekend, I went out with Matt and some coworkers to a rooftop bar. I laughed, I drank, I felt alive again. There was this new girl there, Claire. She had this easy smile, warm eyes, and that effortless confidence that made conversations flow naturally. We talked for hours about music, travel, life, things I hadn't talked with Emily in ages. It wasn't romantic, but it was real. For once, I didn't feel the weight of betrayal hanging over me. When I came home later that night, Emily was waiting by the door, her eyes dark and swollen. "Where were you?" she asked quietly. "Out," I said simply. "With who?" she pressed, and that was when I looked her dead in the eye and said, "Does it matter?" The look on her face, that flash of realization that the roles had reversed, was something I'll never forget. She had been the one hiding lies once, but now she was the one drowning in uncertainty. She followed me down the hall begging me to talk, to not give up on us, but I just closed the bedroom door behind me. I could hear her sobbing again, whispering, "Please don't replace me." And that line cut through me, not because I still loved her, but because I realized how deep her regret ran. The next morning, she tried to cook breakfast. Her hands shaking as she placed the plate in front of me. She said, "I can't lose you," softly. I took a bite, looked at her, and replied, "You already did." It wasn't loud, but it hit her harder than any shout ever could. She broke down completely, dropping to her knees, crying, begging. I walked past her, grabbed my keys, and left for work without another word. That day, I accepted something. Revenge doesn't always need fire or chaos. Sometimes it's as simple as peace. The peace of knowing you survived what was meant to destroy you, while the other person lives in the ruins they created. And as I drove away that morning, I caught my reflection in the rearview mirror. No anger, no pain, just calm. I wasn't the broken man who heard those 5 words weeks ago. I was someone new, someone stronger, someone free.
It had been 3 months since the night she confessed, and by then, everything that once tied us together had turned to silence and dust. The apartment no longer felt like home. It was just a place filled with echoes of things that no longer existed. I had already accepted a new job offer in another city, a clean slate waiting for me just a few hundred miles away. I didn't tell Emily right away. I wanted to see if she'd notice the growing distance, if she'd feel the quiet goodbye forming between us. She did. Her eyes followed me everywhere, searching for signs that I still cared, but all she saw was a stranger, living in the body of the man she once loved. The truth was, I didn't hate her anymore. The anger had burned out, leaving behind something colder, indifference. And that, I learned, was far more painful for her. Every morning she'd ask, "Do you want breakfast?" And I'd answer, "Already ate." Every night she'd whisper, "Good night," and I'd respond with silence. She tried to revive us with apologies, with tears, with desperate touches, but love can't be resuscitated once trust dies. One evening, I came home to find her sitting on the couch with a small box in her lap. She looked up at me with that same trembling voice I had heard the night of her confession. "I know you're leaving," she said quietly. I didn't answer, but the look in my eyes told her everything. She handed me the box and whispered, "Please open it." Inside were old photos, our first trip together, ticket stubs, a bracelet I'd given her on her birthday, and a handwritten note that said, "I'll always be sorry." I closed the box gently and placed it back on the table. "Emily," I said softly, "you don't have to keep apologizing. You made a mistake, and you'll live with it, but I can't keep being the reminder that you broke something you can't fix." Her tears fell silently, and for a moment I almost reached out. But I didn't. I had given too much already. The next day I packed my bags. She stood by the door, her hands trembling. "Where will you go?" she asked, voice barely audible. "Somewhere I can breathe again," I replied. She nodded, trying to smile through the pain. "Can I at least hug you goodbye?" I hesitated, then nodded. She wrapped her arms around me tightly, like she could hold time still, but I didn't hug back. When I stepped away, her eyes were glassy, her face pale. "I hope you find someone who never makes you feel like I did." I looked at her for the last time and replied, "I already found him." She frowned in confusion until she realized what I meant. I found myself. I left without looking back. The city felt different that day. Quieter. Cleaner. Like it was finally letting me breathe again. I drove for hours, no destination in mind, just the open road and my thoughts. For the first time in months, I smiled genuinely. I wasn't thinking about her, or the betrayal, or the pain. I was thinking about how strong I had become because of it. Sometimes the worst heartbreak gives you the best version of yourself. Months later, I was sitting at a cafe in the new city, working on my laptop, when someone asked if the seat across from me was taken. I looked up. It was Claire, the same woman from the rooftop bar.
She smiled that same effortless smile, and something inside me softened. We talked again, this time without guilt or shadows hanging over me. She was calm, grounded, the kind of person who radiated peace rather than chaos. Over time, she became a friend, and maybe something more. I didn't rush it. I had learned that love isn't about filling a void. It's about building something steady, something earned. One evening, as we watched the sunset over the city skyline, she asked me, "Do you still think about her?" I smiled faintly and said, "Sometimes." but not with pain anymore. More like remembering a lesson. She nodded, understanding without asking further. That's when I realized healing isn't about forgetting, it's about remembering without bleeding. A few weeks later, out of curiosity, I checked Emily's Instagram. She had deleted most of our photos, but one remained. A picture of us at the beach, captioned, "Some mistakes change you forever." I stared at it for a while, not with bitterness, but gratitude. Because in some twisted way, her betrayal gave me the courage to grow, to stop living for someone else's comfort and start living for my own peace. I closed the app, leaned back, and breathed deeply. Free! Finally. As the night settled in and the lights of the city flickered below, I thought about how life has a strange way of breaking you just enough to rebuild you into someone unshakable. I wasn't her victim anymore. I wasn't even her memory. I was the man who walked through hell, looked heartbreak in the eye, and chose to rise instead of rot. And somewhere, I hoped Emily found her own peace too. Not with me, not with anyone else, but within herself. Because in the end, love, betrayal, revenge, they all fade, but self-respect doesn't. That was my real revenge. Walking away whole.